Alright, are you an FrSky R9 user? And so was I until FrSky stopped supporting the R9 ACC-ST, which is the original version of this module. It's kind of funny, in February of 2019, I sent FrSky an email in regard to the heartbeat issue that the R9 modules had. Basically, every bunch of packets, the frame rate was doubling or tripling, and it caused a flat line in the set point for your stick commands, and then the flatlining would have an abrupt change on the PIDs, which would then be reflected in the motors as well. And my hope was that FrSky would address the issue with a firmware update, and they did, but it was for the access modules. And this is an original ACC-ST module, one of the original R9 units that you could get. So for our dedicated support to FrSky in purchasing R9 instead of Crossfire as the original purchasers here, we were blessed with the opportunity to buy not only a new Access R9 module, but then you also had to throw away your old ACC-ST radio and buy an Access radio. So that's right, to get the firmware fix, you had to buy a new module and a new radio. Well, that was enough for me, so I got what I probably originally should have got, was a TBS Crossfire unit. And I set the R9 unit to the side. So the only issue I have now is I have a lot of R9 receivers in quads yet still that I haven't switched over. And I kind of hate to throw stuff away. But luckily, the ExpressLRS open source project is to the rescue. They have new firmware that you can load on your existing R9 modules that not only fixes the heartbeat issue, but also speeds up the module with one slight hardware modification to this to make this go up to the 400 baud rate, which is the same thing that you can get with XfireShot. So in this video series, what we're going to do is show you how to flash over all your R9 equipment over to ExpressLRS, the open source solution to fixing up the module and getting a faster frame rate out of it. So all this month is Hacktoberfest. Hacktoberfest is a celebration of open source projects which really support most of the FPV hobby. From our radio transmitters, like we're going to talk about today, to the flight firmware, to the ESC software, which we've talked about in an earlier video. So if you're anybody that has some coding chops, find a favorite project of yours, maybe Betaflight, Emu Flight, Clean Flight, ExpressLRS, BLHeliS, BLHeliM. There's even an open source component of JESC, and there's other open source projects out there that I'm not mentioning because the list is too long to go through everything. And if you write some new code or tweak some code out for something that you would personally like in it, and you submit that to the project and it's a participating project with Hacktoberfest, and that PR is processed and accepted, you will get a free t-shirt. So have at it and support the projects that support your hobby. So I will drop the link down below for the repo of the ExpressLRS project, and you can see here is the source code. What we're going to do is go right over to the wiki right here, and the ExpressLRS project is really in development yet, meaning the project is getting more mature all the time. And there's going to be some steps that I can imagine over the next 6 months to a year that won't be necessary anymore. For example, we're going to have to download a custom version of OpenTX for now, but if you're watching this video in 2021, I bet you that will just be a part of OpenTX. Actually, I know it will be because it's already merged into the OpenTX base code. So the step we're going to do where we need to flash up to a custom build of OpenTX, that won't be necessary as soon as OpenTX 2.4 comes out. We're going to do another step as well where you have to build the binaries to put on your transmitter to then flash the external module. That won't be necessary in, I don't know, 6 months or whatever. So my best advice if you're watching this video and it's 2021 is to go to the ExpressLRS wiki and just see if there's any updates on the process. And if there are, of course, follow those updates. But as of the date of recording this video, we're going to be on the wiki here, and then we're going to go to Flashing ExpressLRS. And we're going to browse down, and we're primarily going to be following this first part here where it's FrSky R9M module. We want to get this module flashed over first, and just going down through the step-by-step process here. And as I just mentioned before, it says, for now, you'll need to compile the code for ExpressLRS. I'll show how to do that just here in a second. It's not very difficult, so don't let that scare you away. But again, eventually those binaries will be released for download. What this paragraph has to do with right here is that in the module itself, there's a speed limitation that you won't be able to run the fastest baud rate that OpenTX can support with your transmitter as of right now. So if you have a QX7, like I do, you can turn down the baud rate instead of doing the hardware mod to this. We're definitely going to do the hardware mod probably in the next video. So I'm going to set that aside for now. We'll just turn down the baud rate. But that's basically what this is saying, that, hey, if you just don't want to do the hardware mod, then if you have a QX7 or any other radio that you have a selectable baud rate, you can just turn it down. Say you have it at 400K for your crossfire unit that you may have or whatnot, you can just turn it down if you have the older module. Again, we're going to do that resistor. It's not that hard. This is just a quick 2-minute video on how to do the flashing, which we're of course going to show. And here is where we need to download the custom builds of OpenTX to flash onto the radio. So we'll go ahead and click on that. And I have a QX7, so I'm going to click X7. So click the radio that is yours that you will need. And from here, we're going to hit the download button, hit save, and then hit OK. The next thing we're going to do is power up our transmitter in bootloader mode. So I'm going to hold the 2 trim switches together at the bottom and then go ahead and power it up. And that you can see right there is the bootloader screen that you get. If you don't already have OpenTX Companion downloaded, I'll go ahead and drop the link for that as well. Go ahead and download OpenTX Companion 2.3. And we're just going to go ahead and plug in USB into the transmitter here. You should be getting screens like these popping up. We're just going to go ahead and close those. What I always like to do here is I hit read models settings from radio. That will confirm that I have connectivity and go ahead and read the setup. The next thing I like to always do is hit backup radio to file. So if you've never done this before, you should definitely do this so you don't lose all this goodness you have in here. The next thing we're going to click is write firmware to radio. I'm going to go out and load the file I downloaded. So I downloaded it here. Actually had it previously before. I actually did this flash already. I'll click the binary here, leave everything else go, and hit write to TX. Once that's done, it will say flashing is done, and hit close, and you are flashed up. From there, you can go ahead and just unplug your USB, scroll down to the radio, and hit exit.
Welcome to OpenTX.
And that should boot up. Now there's a thing that you're going to get on it that I did not get because I already made this change, but your SD card content, it's going to say it's out of date. So we're going to show you here how to fix that easy without downloading all kinds of new SD card content. So what I'm going to do is actually turn my radio off here, and I'm going to reconnect to the computer. So I'm going to go ahead and come back into bootloader mode here and then re-plug in. Now this time when these screens come up here, the one I want to click on is the removable one. And that's actually the SD card in the radio. So we're going to go ahead and bring that window over here. And then you can see what we have here. There is a file on your radio that's OpenTX SD card version. You may need to right click on that and hit open with, and then select Notepad to open that. I've already opened it in Notepad, so once you open a Notepad, you're good. And the version for this specific build, for this custom build we're picking today, is 2.3 version 30. So just change whatever number you have there to version 30, and then when you restart the radio this next time, you won't get that warning about the SD card contents being out of date. If you're coming from a fairly old build of OpenTX, like OpenTX 2.1 or 2.2 or something fairly old, what you might want to do is actually get the new SD card content and put that on the radio. There's some videos about that. I'm not going to go through that whole process because I was really coming from OpenTX, I think 2.3.6 or something, somewhere in that mix. So I'll drop this link down below. This is where you can get the SD card content. The version we're now on is 2.3.10, but it's a custom build of it with some added features into it. And you just browse down to here, you can download the SD card content, put that on there. But as long as that version file says 30, you're not going to get that warning anymore. If you'd have some errors or whatever weird stuff, you might want to replace it and get the SD card content. Of course, if you have custom stuff on your SD card, you have to mesh all that kind of stuff together. Again, there's videos, that's a whole thing in itself. For now, we're going to skip all that. We're on the latest. I was on 2.3 already. I just went up to this custom version, just changed that file version name. We're good to go. So going back to Wiki, we are now at this stage where we have the OpenTX card content. The next thing we need to do is download a file here and put this on our radio, but we also need to get this file called firmware ELRS, which we actually need to do a custom build for now. So to do that, we're going to come back up to the Wiki header, click on that. We are going to scroll down and there's a toolchain setup right here. Click that. And just follow these instructions. So from here we need to download VS Code, for our computer. Go to this website, click download. You can see you can get it for OS, different versions here. Once that's downloaded, we can click it here to do the installation. Now, I did get this message about it for a not meant to be installed by an admin account. Well, I don't even know what all this means. I just hit OK. So I'm not going to run you through the installation. You just hit next, 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 next. Ultimately, at the end, when the installation completes, there will be a checkbox that's checked that will actually start the program. That's going to start up here. We need to go to extensions, and at the search bar at the top, search for platform IO. We're going to go ahead and install this extension. So it takes a little bit of time, but at the end here we'll say platform IO installed, finished. Please restart VS Code. So we're going to go ahead and close that, of course, and restart it, and then we should be in good shape. So following along in the wiki, we're going to the step here, next step, installing the Get client. We're actually going to try skipping the Get client part. I know what that is. It's a client to clone, which the word clone really just means copy down to your computer. So I'm going to skip using that application to copy down to my computer because I have noticed that it says clone repository here, and I can go ahead and click that. So it just wants the URL, which is the URL of where the project is on GitHub. So for example, if I click on ExpressLRS, the URL, if I hit code, is this URL right here. This is the actual address that this repository that we're looking at is on the GitHub server. So if we feed it that URL, it should be able to copy it down. Don't let the word clone confuse you. It's just copying it down to the computer. That's all we have to do is you have to copy the code base down to the computer. So we're going to grab this link here. It's actually in the wiki right here. So you're looking for any of these links that basically has this, and then it's a GIT extension at the end. We just want that. We're going to go and we're going to paste that into here, and then we're going to hit clone from. It says it wants to sign in. We're going to hit clone repository again, and then we're going to paste that same Git link in there. It's going to ask me where do I want to put the repository. So I don't know specifically about this application, and I don't think it matters. However, it does for like Betaflight if you want to build Betaflight. Specifically, it was with the application that Betaflight uses to build it, which was Docker is what I use to build Betaflight. Anyways, the best thing to do is put it under your C drive, users, and this is the location where it's going to copy the stuff down. Find your user account, and then I have a folder here called Get that I created, and then we're going to make a new folder called ExpressLRS. Click that and hit select that as a location for my cloned repository. And then you can see what it's doing now is it's copying everything down. So we can actually browse to that folder, which I just have a quick link to, and I call it the Z drive, ExpressLRS. And it's going to call ExpressLRS under there. And it is going to go ahead and start to copy everything down. And as you can see here, it copied everything down. It also showed the same right here. So I'm going to open it, open that project code for me, and then we can kind of move on to the next step of building it. Okay, now that we have a copy downloaded, we're kind of past all this get client installation, blah, 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 VS Code. We're going to click this next, flashing LRS, and then we are down here right at this screen. So let's take a look at this. So when we come in, we are presented with Welcome to Platform IO. As it says here, we're going to browse to where we have the repo. So that's going to be my C drive. Source code SCR folder, as it says here. Finally, press the open button. Now this is just the welcome page up top here, so we can kind of ignore this. We're going to source user defined text file here. And this is the variables we need to edit. So you can see here what this is just, this is a tab for each file you have open, right? So this is kind of the home screen here that you can open the project or whatnot. And then we're actually opened in this file here, which is in this repository that we've opened. Now, as I talked about in the previous wiki screen, we have to go through and set up how we want it to build, basically the different variants. You can go in here, looking down through this, if you just hold down Control, you can click this link that's in this file here, and it takes you right to this wiki post. You can see what all these different things mean, and all these different things. So if you fly long range, definitely give this a look. If you want the absolute lowest latency possible, definitely give this a look. But if you're just, an average FPV pilot like myself, I'm going to go ahead and just looking through the options. You don't need to go through all the little details. I think how they have it set up is fine. The only two things you really need to edit is put in your binding phrase. So you can see I'm just going to use UAV Tech. And then also I need to pick what region I'm in. So I'm the FCC 915. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. And the way to select these things is you just remove this pound symbol from up front. So when you come to yours, it will have like pound, whatever. That's to comment the code line out. So if you just remove that and then remove it here, and you can see which ones I've edited with the little blue bar here. That's what the coding software uses to keep track of what lines were edited. So the next part we just did this where we changed the variables we needed. We were at this part here where we're at the toolbar on the left. We're going to look at platform IO icon. We're going to go in the project task and we're going to hit the build row. So this is the platform IO bar on the left. Here's project tasks. You can see here at the very top. Now from here you can build everything by just hitting build all, but that would take a whole lot of time. What we want to do up front here is we want to build this right here. This is the R9 via stock bootloader. So we're not going to overwrite the bootloader on the module. With this one, we can actually flash back to this if we wanted to. So that's awesome. The other one we're going to eventually want is this R9mm for the receivers. The first time we're going to have to do it, we're going to use the ST-Link to flash all the bootloaders up there. We do have to flash the bootloaders up, so we wouldn't be able to flash those back to FrSky. Not that we'd ever want to. But those, so you can, essentially, if you are a little concerned, the module itself, you could always flash back, and then you might have to have, if you want to try it and you would want to switch back for some weird reason, that you might have to have one sacrificial receiver that you're not going to be able to flash back. But that's, to me, is a lot better. This is what you'd want to be able to flash back if you needed anything. So, but the first time we'll want to flash this one, and then eventually for future updates, you would just do the pass through, and then you'll be able to, once you build this, you'll be able to update them just through the flight controller. You just plug your flight controller into the flasher, which I'll make a video on that, and you don't have to unwire receivers. But for now, so I'm just going to click this, and then I'm going to go down here and hit build. And you can see the terminal down here, the terminal task is already active. Terminal task, restart task. So we're just going to hit the click because I clicked it a couple times. Okay, after it is done building, you will see that it says success, and it should take a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, depending on what's going on your computer. From here, I'm going to browse out to the ExpressLRS directory. I'm going to go under my source directory, then under POI, then under build, then under the target that we built, which is this stock bootloader. And then we're going to browse down, and here we have this firmware.bin. That is the file we're going to need for the next step. Back to our flashing guide here, we are at this step, so we did the compiling part already. We have our file, and I'm going to go ahead and download this file as well. I'll click this link. Takes me right to the file, hit download, save that, which will go to my downloads directory where I have the other file. And here again, I'm going to turn on my transmitter here, holding the 2 trim switches in, powering it up. Go ahead and plug it into USB here again. The other thing you could do is just pull out the SD card, but I think this is kind of easier. So anyways, again, gonna get a window, opening up the removable flash drive on here. And I'm going to go to my downloads folder where I have both of those downloaded now. And then I'm gonna go under firmware, and I'm gonna paste these in here. And you can see I have my old R9 variants here. So if I do want to flash back, those are on there as well. Okay, so the next process is we're going to power up our radio, have our R9 unit in, of course. I'm going to long press the button here in the center, the enter button, I guess it is. And then we're going to go to the second page, and we're going to go down to firmware or whatever folder you put that in. I'm going to go down to the R9 ELRS BLFRK. We're going to flash to external module. Flash OK. And we're going to go up to the firmware. So that what that flashed is the bootloader. So now we're going to actually go flash the firmware. So we still have the FrSky bootloader on there. It flashed this bootloader on top of it, which then can now receive the firmware. So next, we're going to click on this firmware ELRS. We're going to hold down on that. We're going to hit flash to external ELRS. And when it's all done, you should hear those tones. If you don't hear those tones, something didn't work correctly. It should say OK here as well. And you should hear your radio buzz. And that's a sign that everything is in good order. I do want to grab the Lua script as well. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this. I'll drop this link down below. This is all on the wiki. And I'm going to download the Lua script. Click it. Here it's a little different when you download these Lua scripts. You notice I had to click on the file here and you right click on raw and then hit save link as. And then that's actually how you have to download the Lua script. So I'll put that again in my downloads directory here. Hit save on that. I already have my transmitter plugged in. I'm going to go to the download folder, snag that, and then I'm going to put that under scripts and the telemetry folder. Paste it into here. So I'm in my R9 quads model here. I'm going to go ahead and click the menu button. Then I'm going to long press the page button to go back one screen. And then near the bottom here, I'm going to scroll down to 2. And you can see I have the Betaflight script already set. So I'm going to go ahead and hit none. Click on that and scroll this over to script. And then I'm going to click over to the bar over here and set the ExpressLRS script. And then we are done there. Hit exit. Exit again. Now if I hold the page button down, it will go to my Betaflight script. If I press page again, now I'll get to my ExpressLRS script. So you can see my packet rate up here. So it can change this from 200 down to 100, down to 50, or 25. And this is the frame rate. And this is the frame rate of the packets. So for example, 200 is faster than Crossfire. This is about the same speed as Ghost. So 200 hertz is a 5 millisecond packet, 100 hertz is a 10 millisecond packet, 50 hertz is a 20 millisecond packet, and 25 hertz is a 40 millisecond packet. So that means every 40 milliseconds it's going to send an updated packet on where the sticks are as you're moving your sticks around. Crossfire is 150 hertz, and I believe Ghost is 144. Here's your power settings level, so I can go from 10 all the way up to 1,000 milliwatts. And then I can pick the packet telemetry ratio here as well. You can see you can even take this up to 1 to 128. So there's a bunch of settings in here. Do be aware of this version of the Lua script. It's a little sticky as you're trying to move that around. So for now, I just recommend just not clicking on this. The other ones seem to work just fine. Ultimately, once they get to the next step, this bind button will work here, and then you'll be able to download the firmware ELRS file without having to build it. What we did before in the building process is that binding phrase that we used, we're going to use that for the same build for the receivers, and we won't need to bind. So in this stage, this binding button doesn't work. However, once ExpressLRS gets to the point where it's providing the binaries and the files on its repo, then you won't need to do the whole building process and all that with compiling the code. However, then this bind button will work, and you'll need to bind your receivers just like you do with any other transmitter firmware. Okay, so that is it for flashing over your R9 unit to the new ExpressLRM through the radio transmitter. Now we have the latest and greatest in OpenTX. This build of OpenTX has on it the XfireShot modifications. You can see it has in there the support for Ghost. It also has in there the support for, of course, ExpressLRS for flashing through the module just like we did there. So even with this build, as of this date and time until the next release of OpenTX comes out, now when I put in my Crossfire module, I actually have increased baud rate for XfireShot, so I'll be set there as well. In the next videos, we're going to do the mods to the module to add the resistor to the back for the increased speed for the 400 hertz baud rate. That's pretty simple, pretty straightforward, should be pretty short. We're also going to go through how to flash the R9mm mini modules. Thanks everybody, and I hope this helped.
And smash that like button, please. 'Cause Then if you guys get me 1 billion likes, then I can make videos that are Fortnite. So, do you want Fortnite videos or this video? What's better?